Hi, Vicki. I'm so excited to have you on the show. How you doing?
I am super fantastic. Thanks, Rosie. I appreciate you inviting me to be on the show.
Oh, of course. You're such an interesting person, and I can't wait for you to share your story and your experience with the listeners. Before we get into that, though, your job title, if we go off that, is a purpose-driven video strategist.
Yes.
But I'm not huge on job titles and accolades. So let's take a step away, and can you tell us who is the true Vicki O'Neill? Who are you?
Who am I? Oh, that's a great question. I don't think anybody's actually asked me that before.
Awesome.
Well, it's funny because I just recently added the purpose driven because I started thinking about who I am and how I want that to come across instead of just a title. And I genuinely like helping people. Like, I love to help people figure out problems. And I always tell my daughters, I tell people I come across, like when I say I'm really creative, it's by no means an artist. I can't make anything with my hands. I'm a terrible artist. But I'm very creative when it comes to if there's a problem, I will look at it from every possible scenario to try and come up with a solution. And it's actually something I really enjoy. So when I work with people, that's something that, I bring to the table that they appreciate, which I like. And it's something I'm starting to share more of that with people, just because when you go by a title, people, like you said, you kind of like skim the surface of what that is. And you're just like, who is she? Like, what can I get from working with you? What's the value you can provide? And I'm always looking to provide value to people. So yeah. That would be me on like surface level. How deep do you want me to go?
Oh, let's go. As much as you're willing to share. Like let's go in a bit more to this purpose-driven piece. I love that you've got that in your tagline or whatever you call it on LinkedIn. I don't think many people kind of change it up. There's often very traditional kind of taglines there. So tell me more about this purpose-driven piece. Let's go a bit deeper.
Yeah. So what I do is I help people get confident on camera, but then also create videos for, really getting their personal brand out there, whether they're an entrepreneur, they're working for a company, because we're each, individual people. And even if you work for an actual brand or someone else, you yourself are your own personal brand. So I think it's important to protect that. But also I think it's important for people to share who they are and really it's hard for people to put themselves out there. So I completely understand that. And I empathize with that because I've been there before too. But when we can put ourselves out there and allow people like you and I right now, we're on camera, I'm moving my hands and, if somebody's listening, they're not going to know that, but, you can like read my facial expression, you can see me, you can, you're listening, you can hear me, and it gives you a more comprehensive experience when somebody's on video, and it helps build that know, like, and trust factor a lot faster. So keeping that in mind and thinking, here's how I can help you. There's purpose behind what I do. It's not just, hey, you need to be on video. It's not, hey, let me just help you grow your brand. Here's the reasons why it's important for you to be on video. And let's talk about it, because like your situation's different than my situation, then it's different than everybody else's. So when I go forward with, I'm not here to just tell you to be on video and why you have to be consistent. Let's get down to the reason why it's important to you. And it goes deeper. It's about, what goals are you trying to achieve? How are you going about doing it now? What's working, what's not working? And there was somebody recently, I can't remember who it was because it was in one of my like group chats that I'm in. And somebody had attended my last challenge, my video challenge. And she was actually a guest speaker. Oh, it was Karen Ann Bullock. And she was just like, she had said in one of her calls, she's just like, I went ahead and took Vicki's advice and got on video, and she put it on LinkedIn. And she's like, that has been my highest engaging post to date. It was the first video that she had posted.
Wow.
So it, goes to show that people are paying attention and people want to see her or you or me, and they want to get to know us better. So when you go forward like that and you have a purpose for actually being on camera, then it kind of takes your need or your desire to actually do more with your business or your personal brand to a whole new level.
I know for me, I find I connect with people a lot better through video.
Yeah.
It's just a great way to connect. And you were talking about how it builds the know, like, and trust factor.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you get over that fear of being on camera? Can you get over it?
You can, and it's different for each person too. There might have been somebody who had a bad experience with being on camera, or it's someone who has just never done it before, so they're not sure like what that awkwardness is that it's okay to experience when you first get on camera. So really, it's just kind of taking it down to that really basic level. And when I try to get people to be on camera, it's going with the thought of, you don't need to post this anywhere. This is just for you to get comfortable with pressing record. I tell people, like, if you're going to go out and run a marathon, you don't just go out and run a marathon. If you're never ran before, you've got to figure out, or if you're trying to push yourself to do it, sometimes it's not even going out and running that first day. Sometimes it's just putting on your shoes and saying, that I goal accomplished today, and really breaking it down into smaller steps. So with video, helping people get more confident on camera, sometimes it's just saying, you know what, just hold out your phone, and it doesn't even have to be on them. Just press record, walk around your office or your home or wherever you're at, record a 7 or 10-second video. Don't say anything, just record it. And then the next time, maybe do the same thing and talk so you can hear your own voice.
Right.
The next time, actually put, so that's just kind of like working up to that point where they gain confidence, but then also letting them know that feeling awkward is okay, because that it is awkward, right? I mean, right now,
yeah.
I'm looking at this, this camera on my I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at a camera.
Yeah, right.
Doing that, it feels awkward at first, especially if there's no one that you're talking to. You and I are having a conversation, but it's part of the process. Every new thing is going to feel awkward until you actually do it more often. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get, and the better you'll get.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally agree. I'm a huge advocate for pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And what you were saying about just doing it in small steps, it's exactly right. And I think the more you do something, the more comfortable you get with going outside of your comfort zone, and the further you can go each time.
Yes. Exactly. Probably the same thing with podcasts, right?
Right. Yeah. Like my first podcast, I felt very awkward and very conscious of the words I was using and things like that. But I'm, maybe 20 episodes in now and more comfortable. It's certainly not perfect, but you just get less caught up on it, and you do get better over time.
Yeah. And there's this great thing, whether it's podcasting or video, called editing.
Exactly.
You can edit it out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So true. And we're our own worst critics, aren't we? Really. I don't think anybody else is going to be as critical of our videos or our podcast as we are.
Mm-hmm.
Where did your interest in video start? How did that come about?
Yeah. So, video's been popular I think more so over the last 5 to 10 years. Of course, it's grown in popularity over time. And I tried to get on, I got on video, but I started my very first YouTube video was in 2011. And I shared it on LinkedIn with people to show them that here was my very first video, and it's completely different than my videos today. And because of the anxiety and I can just feel it now thinking about it. Like every time I think about putting myself back in that situation, I'm like, oh my God. Because of that, I was like, this isn't worth it. So I didn't post another video for, it was like almost a year, maybe over a year. Went through the process again, because again, I saw the value of video and that more and more people were doing it.
Right.
So it was in 2012 and I'm like, all right, I can do this. Terrible video, terrible lighting. I'm like, what was I thinking? And I even had somebody who was a photographer at the time, like help me get everything set up. And I was like, oh my God. So same thing, anxiety. I don't like this, trying to memorize the entire script. And I sounded unnatural. And I'm like, no. So fast forward to, 2018, I started my podcast. I'm like, how can I leverage this a little bit more? And in 2020, when the pandemic hit, of course, we're all, at home. And are you familiar with Pat Flynn?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, sure am.
So with Smart Passive Income. So I had been following him, and he decided he was going to go, and he just started it. He didn't have a plan on going live every single day for 365 days in a row, but he did. So I was joining, and then I was connecting with people, and we were all kind of like challenging each other, like, hey, are you going to go live? Are you going to try this? Not to go every day, but just to do like a live stream, like maybe once a week. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this. So I went ahead, and I think it was in April, I decided to go live once a week, every week for the rest of the year. So I did. And again, it was awkward because you press record and you're live and you're like, is anybody going to be here? Is
Mm,
anybody going to show
yeah.
up? Um, there's always that fear, right? And so again, you just get comfortable with it and you get used to it and you get over it and you just keep moving forward.
Hmm.
And then I started to realize the power of starting with video to create podcast episodes because I could create a video and abstract the audio and create a podcast episode. So I was looking for ways to like simplify the process. And so that was working. So I'm like, all right, now I can do, upload videos. So I became this like, I was doing way too much with content. I was creating videos to upload, live streaming, podcasting, posting. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to actually focus on, my business and, helping more people. So with the video, I just decided that I was going to upload videos on YouTube once a week and, just created topics. They were varying lengths. There were some that were like maybe 3 minutes and others that were, 12 minutes. I had, some demos on there
Hmm.
that were like 40 minutes. In fact, I should have focused on HubSpot because I was doing a demo on the free version of HubSpot. I was coaching people and training people on how to use HubSpot at the time. I'm like, I'll just do a demo. So it's become my number one, like viewed, number of comments, liked videos, like of all
Wow.
time. And I'm like, I should have just gone all in on that, like on my YouTube channel. But there's just different types of videos that I've gotten used to creating over time. And with
Hmm.
short form video being more popular and more engaging today, that's where I've kind of created my focus and spend time there with people. I think that was a long-winded answer.
No, I love it. And something I want to go back to is you're talking about how you were doing all the things, you were doing so much.
Mhm.
So what helped you get clear and narrow your focus a bit? Because I think this is something a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, one, I was just exhausted, and I'm like, sometimes you just have to take a step back, right, and realize that like, what am I doing? What's working and what's
Mm,
not working, and I'm like, I just don't want to do all this stuff. And although podcast was actually my highest lead generator at the time, it was something I enjoyed the
mm.
least. So I
Wow. Yeah.
decided I just kind of took, and I'm like, I'm going to take a break from the podcast. I'm going to focus on video was like exhausting to me too, but it was at the end of 2021. So I stopped the live streaming. I was only focusing on the videos and figuring out a process how I could use my video content and actually create content for LinkedIn. And I was on Facebook at the time. I don't know. I don't think I was on Twitter, but so just the different platforms, how can I leverage when I'm already spending time creating and actually, replicate that, repurpose it. So it was that kind of realization of like, I'm doing way too much. I wasn't spending enough time in my business. I was spending way too much time creating
Right.
content. And so I
Yeah.
think it's just, take a step back and be like, do I really need to be doing all this?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's something I struggle with all the time, but taking a step back is so useful,
Yes.
I think.
So you've experienced that too, though, right?
Oh, yeah, all the time. And I think what's helped me the most is getting clear on my values or what's important to me. Like, I haven't always been crystal clear on that. And that's when I start saying yes to all the opportunities and doing all the things and just getting so busy and burnt out. But once I get clear on what's important to me, it's like, well, I don't have space in this for this in my life. This isn't getting me closer to where I want to be, whether that's in business or personal life. And that kind of just makes it easier. Not that it's not challenging to say no to things and get rid of them. Like, I'm sure when you decided to stop your podcast, I'm sure that was a difficult decision, because from what I understand, it used to be something you really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really was. And, I saw more and more people too starting podcast. So I was like, if I stop, that means other people are going to catch up to me, because I stopped at my 100th episode. I was just like, all right, I'll go until I have 100. So, I stopped after 100 and took a break. And I'm like, but now I feel like people are gonna be like, why aren't you doing this anymore? So it was kind of like the fear of missing out, but also my competitive spirit. Like, now I need to keep doing
I can relate.
Yeah. So I was just like, no, I mean, for my mental health, actually, because it was when you start liking something and you get to the point where you don't like it anymore, that's when you're just like, something's just not right with this. So I had to kind of reevaluate my situation too, just to figure out, what I actually enjoyed doing and what people wanted to see more of from me. And then to your point, also that matched my values and my goals. So it's full reevaluation.
It's a process, isn't it?
It's not easy.
No, it's not. But I think it's worth it. Like you say, it does take a toll on your mental health. And for me, like my physical health and just your overall happiness, like you got to keep yourself in check and do those reevaluations, I think.
Yes.
All the time, because stuff changes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's okay. I think that's important.
Right. It is okay. I think change is good. It just makes things a little bit difficult at times, but also can be a great thing.
Yeah. I think it's important to let people know too that if you have gotten to that point where you're just spinning your wheels and trying to create, content or trying to be on all the different platforms at the same time, that it's okay to not do that anymore. Like, you need to protect, your creativity, your sanity, for lack of a better word, and still serve the people who need to hear and see what you have to offer, how you can help them. And I think that sometimes people get caught up in that, where they're like, well, I'm in all these different places. I've got to keep putting it out here. And it's like, you really don't. Just look at what's performing the best and then do more of that.
Right. And that resonates with me so much. I used to listen to, I don't know if you're familiar with Gary Vee.
Yeah.
But of course, he's very much, be on all the platforms and put out, I can't even remember the number he says, but a ridiculous amount of content every day. And it's overwhelming. Like, I hear what he's saying, but also I'm not so sure that's sustainable for me. So it's refreshing to hear your take on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's valuable advice for people.
Yeah. It's, and Gary Vee doesn't, in that statement of saying you need to put out 8 to 10 pieces of content on every single platform, every single day, he's leaving out the critical piece to actually making that happen, is he's got teams dedicated to each platform.
Right.
So he may be the one creating the content, but there was a video I watched on YouTube of one of his cameramen. So he's got people who follows him around with camera.
Yeah.
And, records content. And so this gentleman was being interviewed on a YouTube channel, and he was talking about, how he's got the different teams. And then this gentleman in particular, I can't remember if he was for Instagram or TikTok, but he was doing the camera work and creating content for only one channel. And they had a team of 3 or 4 people dedicated to that one channel. And it became like, everybody on all the teams had one place where it was kind of like a content dump. And then, so Gary would do what he needed to do. His teams would do what they needed to do. And then Gary would go in and actually say, here are the content pieces I want, make them great. And then he'd have other people do. So he leaves that piece out. So,
that's a pretty important piece.
Yeah. So I'm, if I work, I don't compare myself to him at all, because he's way beyond, me. But if I were to do that, I have to put that into perspective, that he's at, let's just call it, step 100 or chapter 100, and I'm at step 10. We're in completely different places. So to compare myself to him and where he is just, it's unrealistic. And I think that's another thing that people do too, is they compare, and then it creates this, it's a level of depression and, just trying to measure up when you're measuring against the wrong things.
Yeah. I've definitely fallen into the comparison trap before, and I can pretty confidently say I don't think it has ever served me well, comparing myself to others.
I think that's important for people to know too, right? Yeah. We all compare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We just can't fall into that trap too much. Let's shift gears a little bit, because I know you haven't always been running your own business.
Mm-hmm.
And what stood out to me the first time we spoke is you said to me, Rosie, I went through 3 huge life transitions or changes in the space of 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot happened for you and a lot changed. So would you be comfortable taking us back and what happened?
Yeah. I'm still processing all that, believe it or not.
Yeah. Because how long ago was this?
So this was in, so we're in May of 2023. This was in June of 2021. And yes, so first off, any one person, there's like studies that have been done that say any one person should only encounter like one major life change like in a year or within a certain time frame,
right,
to maintain, stability, sanity, whatever. So when we were talking, I said I had 3. The reason why I mentioned it too is to, help people, anyone who's listening, to understand that you can process, difficult changes. And the importance of that is to, surround yourself with people who care and can support you in doing that. So with that said, in June of 2021, huge life pivot, unexpected, had to move out of my home into a new home. So that was, major life change. And so that was the first thing. And that was very disruptive. I'm very much a homebody. Like I love being at home. That's where I get my
me
that's
too.
where I feel comfortable. I like to go out too, but like if anybody's just like, okay, if you had to be one place, it would be at home. So for that to happen to me, one, it's huge, but then also it was taking away my core foundation. Like it was basically like yanking it from underneath me. And I had a very short amount of time in which I had to make that change. And then it was forced, if we need to put it that way.
Okay,
Enough on that. So that was in June of 2021. And then I was approached about a job. So I'm in Ohio, and this job was in Virginia, so in the United States. And then that was in September of 2021. I got the job in August. I moved to Virginia in September of 2021.
Wow.
So that was the second big change. And it was out of state.
Just a couple of months later.
Yeah, just a couple months later.
Yeah.
The company I went to work for, during the 6 months that I was working with them, it's a short amount of time, had moved already. During those 6 months, there was a company that was trying to take them over. And it was, if you look at like news headlines, they were saying it was a hostile takeover. So in hostile takeovers, they're trying to make change as quickly as possible. And part of that was my boss, who is the president of our company, was handed a list from his boss saying, hey, here are the people that you need to let go. No choices. And it was the same day. He didn't know it was coming. So list was handed to him, and he had to tell these individuals that today was their last day. And I happened to be one of those people. So that was the third thing. You go from having a job to not having a job. And then I ended up moving back. So I don't know if you want to count that as like a fourth or...
Yeah, I think that counts.
Yeah. But just moving out of state, that was the very first time that I'd ever done that. So it was exciting. But at
Wow,
the same
yeah.
time, it was just like, I didn't have enough time to process the other things that were going on. So it was just a matter of, saying, okay, this is exciting and focusing on the positive of what that was. And then when I was let go, it was, I think this is happening for a reason. So I had to kind of like tap into, it's fine. A matter of what you tell yourself. Again, surround yourself with people who are supportive and understanding and caring. And that really helped a lot with each of those transitions. And I don't really talk about that much with like my daughters or like my family or anything like that. But, when you think about like just, kind of put yourself in that situation, like if today you were told you have to get out and you had 2 days to like pack up your life and move. And then, a few months later, you then are, recruited for a job that you have to move out of state for, so kind of put yourself in those situations and try and imagine how that would feel and like how you would work through those issues or those challenges. And even though there's a positive side to each one of those, each one was, it was a challenge. Many days of crying, many days of just being like, I can do this. There was self-doubt, there was self-encouragement, there was, just a lot of emotional roller coasters, highs and lows, but a lot during that time frame, there were a lot more lows. So I think just focusing on people in, even though I like to be at home, making sure I was having conversations with people was actually really helpful because, if you don't talk to people, then you get in your own head, or at least I do.
Yes.
And it becomes a very quick downward spiral. And if you can't be aware of that enough, then it could, continue that way. But I knew that what it was doing to me, and I knew that I had to do something different in order to reverse that process. But I also recognized the importance that I needed to process things that I was going through.
Yeah.
So when I said before I started this part of the conversation where I'm like, I'm still processing it, it's a matter of saying, you kind of look at self-check. How am I doing today compared to, and this is when comparing yourself is okay. It's comparing yourself to a different version of yourself. So if I compare myself today to the person I was a year ago, I am doing so much better. But the reason why I also mention that is that if you look back at like my content or the videos, I was still showing up. And sometimes you have to put on your acting hat and just, so it's just me. Like I don't have somebody else providing an income for my life. And sometimes you have to just do that. It's a matter of survival. And, as challenging as it can be, you really have to figure out a way to keep moving forward. And so when I tell people, that, who have been following me and we have a conversation, I'm like, yeah, it was like really difficult. They're like, we had no idea. I'm like, good. Like, I don't want to come across online as being like, it's not me. That's not my personal brand of being like, hey, in everything that I'm doing. That's stuff that, I think you need to go through, personally and not necessarily publicize, your entire life. But there were people who needed to hear what I say. I was sharing at that time from a work perspective. So I wanted to make sure that I was continuing to show up for them.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying is really important about not sharing everything online. For some people, they're comfortable with that, but I think boundaries, no matter who you are so important.
Yeah.
And I think some people who are a bit wary of video they don't want to share their whole life. But the great thing is you don't have to.
No.
You set the boundaries.
Yeah, you yourself can determine what you talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Funny that.
Yeah, exactly.
I imagine that, these huge life changes you went through, in an abstract sort of way, I imagine it's a type of grieving in a way because you've lost something and you're changing. And I know, I read recently on your LinkedIn that you lost your mum at a young age, and I lost both my parents at a young age as well. And I think events like that, or at least for me, I don't want to speak for you, have really put into perspective how fragile life is, and that a lot isn't in our control, but also how important it is to take control of the things that we can. And I'd love to hear your take on whether you think losing your mum so young has influenced your perspective on life at all.
Yeah, definitely. And first, I want to say I'm sorry to hear that you lost your parents at a young age, especially both of them. So I'm so sorry to hear that.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I guess that connects us in an unfortunate way, but I actually really enjoy talking to people who've been through something similar, because it's just this instant connection, right?
Yeah, exactly. So when she passed away, interesting, myself and my husband at the time, we were actually living with my mom and dad because we were having our first house built. And there was like a gap time between lease was up and I think it was a couple of months or something before our house was going to be ready for us to move into. And at that time, I'm trying to think, I don't know timing wise, but I think it was during the time after she was given 3 months. She had lung cancer, but she was a non-smoker. Always like to mention that.
Wow.
But she lived in a secondhand smoke household growing up. So I think that was a contributing factor to it. We had moved in, and for me, I saw it as a gift. I get this time with my mom and know that, it's limited. So I was fortunate in that way that we knew that the end was within a certain time frame. And that's either good or bad, they're both bad, whether it's tragically sudden or it's, planned and, what's going to happen. But it gave me time to have, some one-on-one with her. But, when I kind of fast forward through all the years, there have been so many times where I'm like, God, I wish my mom was here that I could ask her, this question, or, whether it was raising my daughters or it was, relationship wise, she probably wouldn't have been able to help so much with work. Now, she was very much both my parents, because they grew up in the, or they raised us in the 70s. So in the U.S. in the 1970s, it was a very challenging economy. So, I grew up with not having a lot, and also my parents doing everything they could to provide for the family, even though neither one had a college degree. So my mom was the type of person who, I didn't realize it at the time, both of them were kind of entrepreneurial. My mom would be the one who'd be like, all right, we need to make some money because I want to take my family, the family of 6 on our final family vacation before the oldest, my older sister, graduated from high school. So it was the final one. And so it was just she was making crafts and selling them at craft shows. And she was doing wallpapering houses when that was popular. She was catering. Wow. So she would do different jobs of things that she enjoyed and would find ways to make money. So from that perspective, she was very creative. And it was just all right, well, it would be kind of nice to have, different moments throughout life where I could be hey, and maybe run an idea by her, or be hey, how did you decide that you wanted to do catering versus, something else? So that kind of stuff, I feel I kind of missed out on, and my sisters. And then also, my daughters, they never got to know her. And there've been so many times where I'm just you just don't understand what it was like growing up. And I'm I can hear it from my mom.
Yeah, that would help.
Yes, exactly. But she was also kind of my grounding person. So if I was overly excited about something, she would calm me down real quick. And it was kind of okay, the excitement's over. Let's get back to, getting things done. You can't stay up there too long. Yeah. Bring it back. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That was just how she was. And so there have been many times, you can relate to that too with your mom and your dad, just wishing that they were there at some point where you could actually ask a question or be what was it like? I don't remember, when I was 7 or, whatever. But then also just to have my daughters get to know him. Like I would have loved to have them get to know my mom. But, it's just something that I know she's looking over us. So I stay focused on that.
I want to go back to something you said. You were talking about, the difference between when you sort of know that death is coming and when it's unexpected, and that neither one of those is easy. And I just want to bring that up because it's so important. When my dad died, it was a freak accident and very unexpected. And with Mum, we had some warning. It was still unexpected, but she got a terminal brain cancer diagnosis. But we had 6 months together. And, people sort of compare the two with me sometimes, which I find bizarre, about, it must have been worse not having any warning. And it's just different. Mm-hmm. And one thing I want to say is that whether your parents die young, old, no matter when it is, we are never ready. I don't think you can ever be ready for something like that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think it's like, when that does happen, whether it's suddenly or it's planned for, it's a matter of, I just think surrounding yourself with people, that can support you and care about you. And it maybe not understand, like if someone hasn't lost a parent, it's really hard to empathize with the situation. But sometimes just being there to listen is the best thing that you can do for people. And I know that's hard for people.
Totally agree. It is. I think as people, especially as women, we just want to fix things, we want to help. But, I think for anyone listening who has a person in their life who has lost a loved one recently and you're unsure how to support them, just listening is the biggest help, I think. Just giving them a voice. You can't fix it. You can't make it better. It's going to be crappy. And that's, grief is a journey and it doesn't go away. But if you can be there and listen, and I think I would agree with you, just surrounding yourself with people is helpful. I tend to be a fiercely independent person and don't like asking for help, but surrounding myself with people, it's always helpful. You don't get stuck in those negative thoughts as much.
Mm-hmm. You and I have that in common as well, being very independent, having a hard time asking people for help.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And actually, one thing I found, people would often say to me, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. And you say, yeah, I will. You never do. And what I actually found, one person, I can't even remember who it was, said to me, what can I do to help? And I had to answer the question.
It wasn't yes.
And I actually found that, yeah. And it was, sometimes I'd say, because it happened more than once, I'd say, I don't know. But other times I'd be like, can you help me make dinner or something just simple, so I think that can be helpful too. I mean, would you have any advice for people who are trying to support someone grieving?
Yeah, I think that was a great question to ask, what can I do to help, or how can I help? How can I help you right now? How can I help you today? Leaving it an open-ended question. And even if they do say, I don't know, just making sure that that's not the last time that you ask them or that you check in on them, because as we know, everybody grieves differently. And knowing that somebody could be going through a hard time, but just they don't let it show. And there's a lot of people that do. I was actually just reading an article about that last night. Do you know who Twitch is? Who was on the Ellen show?
No.
So he, are you familiar with Ellen DeGeneres and the talk show that she used to have? Okay. Mm-hmm. So Twitch, and I think it was Stephen Boss. His real name was Stephen, but they called him Twitch. And he was like, he looked like he was like a DJ, but he never did the music, but he danced a lot. He was an excellent dancer. He was in different movies. And he passed away by suicide this past December. And for some reason, his name came up yesterday when I was having dinner with my daughter. And so we looked it up because I'm like, I wonder what, if they ever decided what had happened, why? Because he seemed happy. He's a dancer. It's endorphins. Those are things that make you happy. And so I was reading an article on it, and they were just we looked at his last because him and his wife are great dancers, so they were always posting on Instagram and TikTok. And if you look at his last video, which was an hour before he committed suicide, he was dancing with his wife. And then his message, though, was the thing that kind of like, may have been like not really a sign, but when you look back, you're like, okay, it could have been a sign. But it goes to show you that he was smiling, he was dancing, he was, acting fine with his wife in this video, just like all the other ones. And it's proof, one instance that no one had a clue that he was struggling, mentally or emotionally or anything. And when we have people in our lives who are close to us that pass away, just checking in that one time to be like, how are you doing? What can I do? It's great to do that, but it can't stop that one time, just making sure that they're okay and keep, offering or, even take them something or see if you could take them somewhere to run errands just to get out of the house or, something, right?
Yeah. We never know what people are going through. And I think a lot of us are so great at masking it and putting a face on. And, the story you just shared of Twitch is a heartbreaking example of that. He seems so happy and vibrant just an hour before, dying by suicide. So I think it's a timely reminder to check in with your loved ones, right? And it's not a one-off.
Yes, exactly.
It needs to be again and again. And you might drive them nuts, but hey, you're showing them you love them and you care. And in my mind, I think it's worth it.
Yeah. And it'll probably be at some point, if it's, somebody who's dealing with grief can actually, mention later on, like, hey, I know I didn't thank you earlier when you were kind of in my face or asking me constantly about, if I was okay. But they'll appreciate it at some point, so just make,
definitely
feel like you're doing the right thing. And at some point, it'll be recognized, not that you need that, but just to know that it's making a difference.
You're now in this amazing business that you seem really happy in, and it's really purpose-driven, which I love. But obviously, it was a bit of a tumultuous journey to get there. And I want to talk about what you might call the secure paycheck fallacy. We all think that it's safe to have this paycheck and work for somebody else. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm not so sure I agree that it's as secure as we think.
I would agree with you. It is not. The sudden loss of job, that's happened to me twice. And I think that it happens to a lot of people, right? So, we could look at all these major companies over the last 6 to 12 months that have laid off like tens or hundreds of thousands of people. And a lot of times it's without notice. But when you work for another company, it seems like you've got security because you get that, you might be used to that paycheck coming in every 2 weeks or whatever that time frame is. But honestly, if you look at it from a company perspective, you're a commodity. Like, you're easily replaceable. If you're doing a job that other people applied for or other people could do, then you don't have any job security. That's a concept from 50 years ago where there actually was more job security. But today, because there's so much change, and there's so many options and there's so many people looking for jobs or, anything, a way to make money, you're easily replaceable. So, I mean, if anybody wants to argue that, I would love to have a conversation about it, but it's...
Me too.
Yeah, we can all do this. We can just have a group conversation about pros and cons. But I would just say don't get too confident unless you're the actual president or owner of the company, because even if you're a VP level, your time, your days could be numbered there and you may not even know it. And that's, it's part of the problem, the communication and the, you're just easily dispensable. Let's put it that way.
Definitely. And you experienced that in just one day. You went from having a job to not.
Yeah.
No notice.
Exactly.
It's as quick as that. let's talk about how that compares to running your own business. Because I would love to say that it solves all our problems. But let's have some real talk. Let's talk about the good and bad. Walk us through that.
Yes, they're completely different. So you may think that having your own business is more of a security blanket, and it can be to a certain degree. But if you're building a business, the security is not there. Like you're still, scrapping to try and find business or trying to, get products into people who need them, create awareness that you even exist. As we know, online, it's more and more challenging to stand out or even get people to see or notice us, let alone try and sell something to them so that we can actually, pay the bills. So, and if you've got an established business, then you have to worry about how are you going to continue to serve them, or stay competitive or stay on top of technology or new offers that could be out there, whether you're selling physical products or, services. It's an ongoing, you have to be okay with, one, things not going well, two, adapting constantly because you can't get too comfortable in any one situation. Even if you're somebody who just focuses on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, the algorithm changes constantly, which means you have to change constantly. If you're coaching people on LinkedIn, how to maximize your reach and use of LinkedIn, right? And it's the same with anything. Yeah. It's a constantly moving target. So I think you have to be okay with change and you have to be okay with uncertainty and taking risks and being okay with the income that comes in not being the same from, it's not even week to week or every 2 weeks, it's day to day. Right, depending on what your offers are when you're, opening the opportunity for people to, buy from you. So it's a struggle. I personally think that you have to be mentally strong to start your own business. Like you can't be mentally weak and expect to start your own business and that everything's going to go great and there's not going to be any obstacles. You're not going to have any failures. You have to be okay with failing. Like that's just, it should be... Before you can establish any first customer, before you could establish your LLC or your company or whatever, it should be stated that you have to be okay with failing and you have to adapt and you have to be okay with that too. Like, I just don't think people understand that that's part of the process. Would you agree?
Yeah, totally. Totally agree. And despite all of that, both you and I have chosen this path. But to someone listening, that might sound terrifying. So would you warn everybody not to start their own business, or what's your take?
Great follow-up question, because now I'm like, yeah, you're right. I did make it sound really terrifying. I like to terrify people when it comes to being real, right? You don't want to sugarcoat it and then people get the wrong expectations. No. But the good side of having your own business is that you control your destiny. So if you want to start off selling widgets and then you want to switch and all of a sudden become a social media guru, you can do that, right? You've got that flexibility and you don't have to report to anybody and you don't have to get approvals and you don't have all these different layers that you have to go through to get one small change approved that now is out of date by the time it gets approved. So I think that's the good side of it. So you get to work with the people that you want to, you get to offer the, services or products that you want to, you get to charge what you want to. You can determine what time of day you want to work or how many hours in a day you want to work. Like there's a lot of benefits to that. And I think the time, the amount of time that people work in a day or just the work hours is one of the biggest reasons why people decide that they want to, start their own business. That and how much money they might be able to make. I would say those are probably the two top factors for people.
Yeah, such a good point. I know for me, I work whenever I want. I'm not restricted to the 9 to 5 and you have to come into the office. If I want to work at 11 p.m. at night because I'm awake and buzzing, I can.
Yeah.
If I want to sleep in till lunchtime, I can. And for me, I love that. It brings so much joy to my life. And just even though there's a lot of pressure and there's so many stresses of having a business, I just feel freer.
I think that's really important what you just said right there.
Over that time.
Is the happiness side of it, right?
For sure. And on that, how would you say your happiness or just life in general has shifted now that you have your own business compared to, I don't know, maybe where you were before these 3 huge life changes just, chucked a few right hooks at you?
Yeah. I would say I'm like a ton happier. I think that amount of time, though, also has the circumstances weren't needed. The time was needed. So 2 years ago, I was still trying to figure things out. And then, 2 years ago to today, I'm kind of doing the same thing, but not really. I'm just doing it a little bit differently, and I'm focusing in on video. So before it was just kind of like digital marketing, and now it's like video because I see a huge opportunity with that. And then, of course, AI, making life easier.
Yeah, true.
Going to make life and videos easier. So I think that's, it's just come, I don't want to say full circle, but I feel a lot more joy and happiness, purpose. Like even saying that right now, like I got really excited. I was talking about before like that. It was like, it was giving me anxiety. Like right now I'm talking about it. I'm like, I'm excited about what I'm doing, about what I'm doing moving forward. The people that I work with, like that brings me joy.
That's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. Like that fills me with joy just hearing it. For people listening who are maybe stuck in a job that isn't feeling aligned, they know they want to change, but they're terrified or they don't know what to do, what would your advice be to help them move forward?
Another great question. You're so good at this.
Well, thank you.
I would say to research, online, if it's something that makes sense on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever that, depending on what you want to do or just, trying to figure things out, I would say to spend time on those different platforms, research, what it is that you're considering, see, if there are other people out there doing it, and that's okay because you'll want to go and you'll actually want to connect with them and you'll want to learn from them and even like ask them questions and, really just do the due diligence up front before you actually take that leap because you want to make sure that you're not going to leave a job and then kind of go into something where you don't know if you're going to be making any money. That's just a quick downward spiral to nowhere. So making sure that you have a way that you're actually going to make money and then kind of having a cushion there, at first. Just in case things don't go as planned, as we both know, things typically don't go as you expect. But that's true. Okay. Yeah. Just start small. And I would say start it as, whatever you decide to do, to start it while you're still working your corporate job and kind of build it up so that you understand what you might be getting into full time because you've already experienced it part time.
I think that's really sensible advice. That's so wise. So yeah, I totally agree because I think what you don't want to happen is reach a point where it's too late to be doing your due diligence and the research and building up financial runway. Like if you hit that wall and you can't work because you're so burnt out and you just can't, that's when you're not in a great position. So if you can be proactive and start taking those steps now, it's going to make the transition so much easier.
Yes.
Or at least I think so.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it just makes sense, though, too, right?
Now, one more thing that I want to touch on before we sign out is you've mentioned risk and fear. How do we get better at taking risks and at facing our fears? Because I feel like these two things are key for personal growth. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
And
100%.
how do we get better at it?
Yeah. I agree. I would say too, it's hard to say to get used to fear and
that's true. Yeah.
I think a lot of times fear holds us back though from doing something. So really, I would say calculated risks that, it's kind of fearful, but at the same time, that there's a benefit at the end, meaning that you're either going to learn that this is something that you want to do or something that you don't want to do. Because sometimes you have to put yourself out there and experience something first before you can make a decision if it's something that you want to do. And it's scary, right? So, yeah. So sometimes we have to put ourselves in that situation. And I would say that anybody, if you're at least 25, you've probably experienced some level of fear of something, whether it was, graduating high school and saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. Or if you do know what you're going to do, going to college because now you're on your own. There's always something. We've all experienced it. So focusing on the everybody has, but then not spending so much time in the fear, but spending more time on here's what happened because of the fear. So you graduated high school, which was, you're going to at some point. You decided to go to college for a reason, and then you went to college. What was the benefit of that? If you're 25, you might have already graduated. So the benefit of that was now you've got a 4-year degree that you can now apply, and you are more qualified for higher paying jobs that are going to lead you down a path of, more success. Or you did this, and now you can start your own business. So there's the fear leads to something, and it's good or bad. And if it's bad, that's okay. It's a learning experience. Now you know. But if you have fear and you don't jump into it, either hesitantly or, all in, you're never going to know. So you're going to stay stagnant, and it depends on if you're okay with that or not. I'm just not.
I'm definitely not. No, that's right. And you're never, ever, ever going to know if it's the right or wrong decision until you make a decision and try.
Exactly.
Like, you just have to pick one. And if it doesn't turn out, that's okay. Now you know, and you can do something else.
Exactly. But we also know, too, that once we've done it, and so that moment that you do, an example is like getting on camera. So a lot of people are like, I don't want to create my first video. And it's that fear of being on camera. But once you hit record and it's done, just like a to-do list, you've got all it's not fearful, but you're just like, ugh. But once you cross things off, you're like, oh, that felt great. Now you've got something that feels even greater because there was fear tied to it. And now you've accomplished it. And it's energizing. And when you focus on that is something that can help you take that next step or try that next thing. But if you allow fear to hold you back, you're just going to become more fearful. So it's a choice.
I love how you framed that. That's so good. I love it. I'm repeating it in my head. I'm going to have to watch this back. Vicki, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm feeling really invigorated and excited, after speaking with you. And I feel like I could just continue this conversation for hours. But, we both need to get on, you with your day and me, I guess, with my evening. But again, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our chat, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Oh, thanks so much, Rosie. It's been an honor to have this conversation with you and to just, get to know you a little bit and just experience this process with you as well. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you.
If this episode resonated with you at all, could I please ask that you share it with a friend who you think could get value from it? And whilst you're doing that, make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss another episode. And whilst you're following or subscribing, please leave us a rating, preferably 5 stars, and also a written review. Doing each of these things is going to help this podcast reach more people and impact more lives, which is, at the end of the day, is what we're here to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Remember, you matter, you're worth it, and you are so, so capable. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week.